Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Ricada of Ricada Law, small law firm in central Minnesota. How's it going, guys? Look, we have the rare, hopefully less rare soon, midday show, daytime show today. A couple of reasons for that. Mainly, I wasn't able to get home at the time I thought I would last night. And the show was going to start really, really late. And really, God, all this fucking mic arm. Really, really late shows are not really, really great shows. And so I figured, why not just do a daytime show along with the nighttime show tonight? We're going to have both. So we'll try. I've been wanting to do more daytime shows. I had a window of time today to do it before I have to get in the car and start driving again. But we'll use that window of time to kind of test this out. Remind people of the daytime that I exist, which is cool. And I get to bitch about some stuff and get it off my chest before, the day is over. There we go. So anyway, hey, how's it going? Do I have an opinion on red Solo cups? Not really. I mean, they're fine. I mostly drink whiskey if I'm drinking, so I don't like to drink out of plastic. It kind of taints the taste a little bit, so I'm not a big fan. All right, here we go, guys. We're not going to take too long. I'm not going to belabor everything. I'm on a short-ish timeline for this show. I'm going till about 2:30 Central Time, and then I have to get moving. I have to get a move on. I've got some kid driving to do, and then I'm really happy. I get to go bowling with my sons this evening, which will be great. I love bowling. I used to bowl a lot, and I was okay at it. Now I don't bowl very much. This fucking mic arm is going to be the death of me. Yeah. So anyway, used to bowl a lot. Now I bowl a little bit when I can, but I always liked it. But this is a father-son event, so good times to go hang out and do that. Did I ever show these people your nose Emperor's Tarot card? No, I haven't. I don't think. It's still up in my closet, which is weird. Did my wife pick out my shirt at Costco? I wish. That'd be cool. But no. Do you have an opinion of military special whiskey and red Solo cups? It's the only thing that can make military special whiskey better or like more bearable is a red Solo cup. Actually, military special, their whiskey is the least offensive thing that they sell, I think. Their tequila is horrid. The tequila is the worst thing. It's one of the worst drinks I've ever had. I put it up there with Malort, in my opinion. My humble opinion. Some people may like I don't like tequila in general. So having tequila in from the military is really, oh God, it's disgusting. That agave flavor is just nasty to me. But yeah, I think it's the bourbon or the scotch are both kind of okay. You're like, I've had worse drinks. So those aren't bad. The red Solo cups are just not conducive to anything you want to taste. Like if you want to just pound liquor, that's fine. I invented a drink the other day. I didn't do much for it. I call it the third rail. And so you got to go to the bar and you order, it's 3 rail liquors. So it's the rail vodka, rail gin, and rail bourbon. And then you add blue curacao, pineapple juice, and hot sauce and make shots. Well, you have the bartender make shots out of it or whatever. And I thought it was going to be disgusting. But turned out to be really good. It's really smooth. It's like, wow, this is all just cheap trash liquor. That's great. So there you go. If you want a free drink I invented, you can try it. You can try that out. Okay, let's talk really quickly about the topics that we're doing tonight or today, right now. We're going to talk a little bit about Cohen. His testimony is going on in the Trump hush money trial. They keep calling it the hush money trial. It's the It's the falsified business records trial if we go by what's actually a crime, because hush money isn't a crime. It's not a criminal act. In fact, Donald Trump could pay Stormy Daniels as much money as he wants to shut her stupid mouth, because you can do that. That's just a contractual agreement. That's fine, except if the contractual agreement is covering up like specifically illegal activity. Like, you can't contractually obligate someone to not talk about a murder that you committed, right? Like, or something like that. But in general, you can contractually obligate people if they're willing to not talk about damn near anything. So it's like, it's weird because people are like, oh, he paid to keep someone quiet. Oh, he paid to keep him quiet during a campaign to try and win the election. Yeah. I mean, yes, that's not anyone who thinks that's a problem. And the media tries to make it a problem, but it's like, well, politicians do a lot of things as they're campaigning to try and win an election, to make themselves look better, to keep something that maybe isn't the best moment out of prominence. If that were a crime, every politician would be killed. Maybe it should be a crime. But no, every politician would be on the block. And it's so weird. It's like, he paid her money to influence the 2016 election. Well, yeah, of course he did. That's the whole point of running for office, is you want to influence the election to win for yourself. Like, that's the whole idea. But that's not the criminal act. The criminal act is falsifying business records, which would be basically a mischaracterization of the funds somewhere for paying off Stormy Daniels. And so you go, all right, how do you misclassify these? What do you do? And it gets really complicated at that point, because it has to do with who's classifying the payments, who's classifying the money, on which end of it, right? How's Trump classifying the money when it's being spent, when it's being sent to Cohen? How is Cohen classifying the money when it comes into him? How is it being logged into, Trump Incorporated, Trump company, the company's books, wherever the money's coming from, wherever it's going? How is it being cataloged as far as tax purposes and stuff like that? Because if you catalog it as legal expenses on behalf of Trump industry or whatever, there's a good argument that it is. If he's paying his lawyer, Michael Cohen, to do stuff that benefits the corporation, kind of sounds like a legal expense. It's not legal advice, by the way. It gets more complicated than that. You'd need to justify your own payments to hookers or whatever with your own lawyer. But if you have a lawyer doing legal work or doing work on behalf of the company and essentially creating a settlement agreement for someone to not speak about something, you have a non-disclosure agreement that you write and you have them sign. It's a contract. That's all legal work, and it's all relatively routine. The circumstances here are a little bit less routine because it involves Trump and then Stormy Daniels, and then Trump runs for president, obviously. But if it's legal expenses and that's how it's categorized, then that's not necessarily wrong or right. If it's just a personal expense, but it's categorized as a legal expense, it's different. If it's a campaign expense, all these things kind of have to get factored in. And the hardest thing is proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it wrong on purpose, with the intent, the criminal mindset, the mens rea to actually do something wrong, rather than just having it be so fucking complicated to spend money in this dumb system that we have. I mean, think about this. How ludicrous is it that you want to pay someone something for whatever purpose, and you have to catalog that money and write it down and make sure it's organized correctly with proper IRS codes and shit like that? It's like, well, this only exists because taxation exists. Taxation is theft, and all thieves should be shot in the face. So therefore, this is stupid. This whole system of criminal activity exists because the government has some weird situation in which they need to be paid for everything that we do. The reason you can't just give someone $130,000 to shut them up is because it might be a gift. Well, or it's income for them. It's either income for them or it's a gift, right? So if it's income for them, they have to pay taxes. If it's a gift, then you have to pay taxes because it's over the gifting limit. What the fuck? How does that work? Oh, because the government says so. Like, well, what did the government do to facilitate you giving someone else money? I mean, they exist. They exist. It's okay. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the Cohen testimony. Not a ton. Basically, you know the drill. Trump's team is just there to discredit Cohen. Cohen's just there to say, yeah, whatever the prosecution says, that's what Trump did. Alan says, Nick looks so pale. Rip Mr. Regatta. It's because I am pale. The sun is finally, like coming out for reasonable things in Minnesota. So I should be hopefully darkening up soon. I got to get my melanin injections. Wait, no. All right. Then we've got this Hawaii judge. He's actually I think he's the Chief Justice of the Hawaii Supreme Court. And we're going to talk about that. He's calling out the conservatives on originalism. He was just interviewed by Slate, the number one publication for drooling morons. And Slate is doing a series on judicial originalism or constitutional originalism as the one theory that ruined American law or whatever. So we'll talk about that. Because as you go through it, you can see just like what's wrong with the judicial system and these justices that are out there. The way they talk to people, or the way they frame ideas and concepts, and the way they approach law is actually terrifying when you think about it. And it's what makes them think originalism is terrifying. But if you get to the basic concept of originalism, it's this. When a law or statute or constitutional provision is codified, when it's put into place, it's an accepted part of the code. It should be read as understood at the time of its adoption, right? And so what you have here is this idea that when you set something in stone, it's set actually in stone. It's not put on like a RC car to drive around at your leisure. Justices who criticize originalism, especially like this guy, he's sitting there saying, well, originalism enshrines American law in the ideas of racists and misogynists and homophobes. It's like, well, I don't think they were scared of homos back in colonial times, but maybe. But it's like it enshrines these ideas of old of people with bad moral principles today, which is a very, very fallacious way to do anything, but enshrines their ideas of something into American law. It's like, well, yes. Yes, it does that. That's kind of the point. Now, if you write a law and you put that law on the RC car, right? And you let the law just change with time and its meaning, it eventually becomes meaningless because the definition of words, common usage of phrases and expressions change over time. So how do you have consistent predictability with the law? Well, you can't if you don't cement it in a moment in time. If you cement it in that moment in time, it's highly predictable. You know exactly what they're talking about. We know what they meant at this point. We don't necessarily know that they would mean the same thing today with the same words. So maybe we don't use those. But originalism isn't the be all end all of constitutional analysis for conservatives either. It's a starting place. It's a philosophy. It's an idea. And they're not anchored to it, right? So we'll talk about that. And then finally, I'm incensed. I'm actually incensed. So there's an investigation into the Oregon Alcohol and Cannabis Commission, because there were allegations that the commission employees were using their influence, knowledge, and personal connections to redirect expensive and rare bottles of whiskey away from the public and into their own homes. Yes. So these government officials are using their government connections to get bottles of, we'll say something like Pappy Van Winkle, 23-year family reserve, right? These bottles that are thousands of dollars, but more importantly, are extremely hard to acquire. These are the guys who effectively control distribution of the state for these types of bottles, and they're directing them to the liquor store right next to their office and buying them, reserving them and buying them and taking them home, depriving the public of access to these things. And that's just fine. That's okay. It's okay. And you're like, wait a minute. Why is that okay? You'll find out why it's okay. And it's fucking infuriating. So that's what we've got. That's what we've got here for the show today. Like I said, going till about 2:30. Will you be covering the lawsuit alleging sexual assault charges against DJ Academics, Major Drake supporter? I had no idea about it, but maybe we could do that. I'm not sure. So, I haven't heard anything about it because I don't follow rap stuff, but we'll see. Rayona 1868 says, I groom Tyler Perry's dogs. The word grooming is now like, I mean, it always had kind of this dual meaning, but now it's worse. Because like, well, are you just waiting till the dogs are 18? Like what's going on? But I have to sign an NDA every year. Does that mean he's bad for keeping me silent? Yes. Bad Medea. Bad. Yes, he's bad for keeping you silent. Dub says we need full streams back on YouTube. I hate navigating Rumble. Well, this stream will not be flipped. This will be on both YouTube and Rumble. So, again, because it's so short, I'm just not going to bother like doing that flip thing today. Lord of the Reese says, just wanted to give a shout out to world champion John Ward. World champion John Ward, world champion, the Third Continental Congress, and Operation Chesterton. We got together and shut down a drag queen story hour in Pennsylvania. Hey, there you go. Good job. The drag queen story hours are weird. Like, I don't care about people doing drag and drag shows and shit. Like, that's fine. But why do you have to drag queens reading books to kids at libraries? Like, that's just awkward to me. I'm not sure why it belongs in there at all. See, Pinking 554 says, it'd be easier to prove a misdemeanor than it is to prove he was falsifying to hide a crime. Why? We don't even know what crime he was hiding yet, and prosecution is about to rest its case. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about the falsifying business records for the, to hide a criminal act. This makes it a felony. They don't have to prove the underlying criminal act that they're allegedly attempting to hide, which is insane. Not like that's just an insane proposition, but okay. CLE Tech 91 says, hey, Nick, did you ever meet the Cat Baker of Pure Pleasure? Cat Baker of Pure Pleasure. No, I don't think so. Cat Baker. What's a Cat Baker? No idea. But I have no idea what the fuck that is. Instagram. Okay, we got to pull up my. I just doxed my. I keep stories organized. Pull up my Instagram. I messaged myself on Instagram, so any links to interesting stories. Very cool. I haven't covered this story of the Kenosha teacher who was grooming a student, sent more than 600 messages to the victim. Oh, damn. And of course I didn't grab the Cohen story. One second. So Cohen is being cross-examined by Trump's team. Hold on. Cohen's being cross-examined by Trump's team, and it looks like it's going to go into tomorrow still. And they're going after him. Michael Cohen, former attorney for Donald Trump, former fixer for Donald Trump. Who doesn't want a fucking fixer? Former fixer for Donald Trump is now, of course, opposed to Donald Trump, and he is the guy who allegedly made this payment to Stormy Daniels, and so he's there to testify about how the money was supposed to be categorized. And he's testifying for the prosecution. We can only assume that he's testifying for the prosecution to say that the money came from Donald Trump, not from Cohen himself. It was reimbursed. It was always expected to be from Donald Trump. Trump asked him to do this, all this stuff, all things that Trump has vehemently denied. The Trump story, if I understand correctly, is essentially that this problem was out there. Cohen went out and fixed it by basically giving Stormy Daniels $130,000, saying you shut your whore mouth and never talk about this again during the 2016 campaign for the presidency. Cohen wants it to come from Trump because then Trump can go to jail, allegedly. But if the money came from Cohen, if he acted on his own, then we have a whole different question of what's going on. So the Trump attorneys have one major job, because Cohen's going to go in and say whatever the prosecution wants. Cohen is also convicted for perjury, which makes his testimony somewhat, or should be somewhat, less credible, right? Like, that's the whole purpose of having a conviction for dishonesty, disqualify some people from even being witnesses, and also remove some of the protections that a witness would normally have from having their character examined on the stand. In this case, he doesn't have those protections. They get to go after his character for truthfulness. They get to bring up his, his perjury conviction, stuff like that. And that's very important because their entire job is to discredit him. That's what they need to do. They need to discredit him. They need the jury to say, this guy's a liar. He's a weasel. He's going to do whatever the government says. He's not reliable in his testimony. Is it going to work? I don't know. In theory, you'd go, yeah, Cohen can't be trusted, but also these are jurors and juries, and they have so many biases in whatever direction. And just because Cohen shouldn't be trusted doesn't mean that that is going to translate to them actually not trusting him. It's not necessarily going to translate to them saying, hey, this guy has a personal animus towards Donald Trump, and he might be motivated to help a government agent get Trump to go to jail because there might be something in it for him. Who knows? Stonebleed says, yo, what the fuck are you doing up right now? Be well. Well, I'm normally up right now. I'm just not normally home. So, but yeah, we have, I wasn't able to do a stream last night. So doing 2 today, 1 right now. And then of course, 1 at the normal time tonight is the plan. But yeah, back to Cohen. So the whole point is to discredit Cohen if you're Trump's attorneys. And there's plenty to discredit him with. There's plenty to show that he's motivated to put Trump in jail, that he doesn't like him, that he doesn't like Trump's attorneys, all of that stuff. That's easy enough to do. The problem is, for Trump's team, all of that stuff is fine and doesn't actually mean he's testifying inaccurately or untruthfully or anything like that. Because tons of people are motivated to have the person they're testifying against go to jail, right? Just think of the family of the victim of any criminal act who's testifying against the alleged perpetrator. You go, okay, well, they want them to go to jail. Like, they want them to be convicted and go to jail. That doesn't mean that their testimony is false or even inherently distrustworthy. You have to go after specific elements of the testimony and specific elements of the witness's character, if you can, for truthfulness. And that's what they're going to do here. But, we'll see what we've got. There's some opinions out there. Now, this is a Newsweek article, about this, and it's written by a professor. So you can pretty much disregard whatever they're going to say. Whatever they're going to say, because they're a professor of law. Let's see, what are they a professor of law? So here we go. Anthony Alfieri, professor of University of Miami School of Law in Coral Gables, Florida. Hold on. Let's see who this guy is. Very important. Let's look at his CV real quick. Oh my God. Ew. Okay. All right. Here you go. Here's this guy. So a quick look at his biography. Anthony V. Alfieri, professor of law and Dean's Distinguished Scholar, is founding director of the Center of Ethics and Public Service and its Community Equity Lab, Historic Black Church Program. What? Why? And legal profession program at the University of Miami School of Law. He holds a secondary faculty appointment as a professor of public health sciences in the Department of Public Health Sciences, Division of Health Sciences Research at the University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine, and an affiliated faculty appointment with the ABES Center for Ecosystem Science and Policy at the University of Miami. Wow. Professor Alfieri earned an AB. I don't even know where the fucking AB associate what in 1981. Hey, that's when I was born, from Brown University, graduating magna cum laude with concentration and senior thesis honors from the Center for Law and Liberal Education, and a JD, that's a Juris Doctor, that's a law degree, from Columbia University School of Law, 1984, graduating with Harlan Fiske Stone Scholar, Charles Evans Hughes Fellowship, and Jane Marks Murphy Prize honors. Wow. It's very impressive. From 1984 to 1987, Professor Alfieri served as a staff attorney in the South Bronx trial office of the Civil Division of the New York Legal Aid Society, specializing in federal and state complex public benefits litigation, welfare. Subsequently, he held clinical appointments at New York's Law School, where he served as a clinical associate professor and the managing attorney for the Federal Litigation Clinic, supervising a docket of federal and state administrative district court and appellate court cases, and at Marquette University Law School, where he served as an assistant professor of law and the director of clinical studies. Additionally, he recently served as a visiting scholar for a 5-year term at the Dartmouth College Ethics Institute. 1991, he joined the University of Miami School of Law, where he teaches legal ethics and professional responsibility, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to go through all of this because I just want to point out that this guy who's delivering this opinion, Anthony Alfieri, why does a guy who's been in as a professor at a law school since 1991, and prior to that spent 3 years working in a legal aid office in the civil division doing public benefits litigation, which is just welfare and, housing assistance. Why is he telling us what's going to matter about this is like me telling you, right? Like, this is like me going, oh yeah, they're doing this to Cohen. It's going to matter this way or that. It's like, why would I know? Why would this guy know? But I love it. They're like, oh, he's a law professor at the University of Miami. He's like, well, what did he do though? Like, what makes his commentary on this particularly valuable? Can any of you guys find it? Like, where is it? This guy's been in a classroom since 1991. That's as long as I've lived in Minnesota. It's 33 fucking years. He's been in a classroom. He hasn't been influencing judges. He hasn't been cross-examining witnesses. He is an expert witness. Great. But why is this guy specifically qualified to teach us about how this will affect the judge? He's not. But they give him credit. They give him credibility because he's a law professor. So he told Newsweek that no matter what the defense lawyers throw at Cohen, it won't overcome what has already been established by other witnesses and through banking and other documents. Oh, won't it? How do you know? Again, how do you know? Remember, the question is not, did Donald Trump pay Stormy Daniels or did Cohen pay Stormy Daniels or anything like that? The question's kind of twofold. One, was the payment categorized properly? That's threefold. Two, was the incorrect categorization of the payment intentional? And three, was it done to cover up a crime? Those are the critical questions here. Those don't really have much to do with the paper evidence. Because the paper evidence, again, showing that it happened isn't the problem. Showing that Stormy Daniels got money from Cohen on behalf of Trump for this one particular thing, I don't think anybody's in doubt of that. What they're in doubt is, was this done to cover up a crime? Was it done as a criminal act? Trump, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee for 2024, is the first former president in United States history to stand trial in a criminal case. He's pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying records, continually said that this case and other criminal and civil challenges involving him are politically motivated, and they obviously are. Alvin Bragg, the prosecuting attorney in this case, actually campaigned on prosecuting Donald Trump. Am I okay? I look tired as fuck. Well, I am okay. I'm also tired. Yes, So, one thing people may not realize. So, I have narcolepsy, right? And narcolepsy is not what most people think. Like, it's not like, oh, you just pass out randomly. Narcolepsy is a complex neurological mess where your brain interprets your awake time as being tired. Your brain interprets being tired usually as being awake, which is why many narcoleptics are night owls, because as the day progresses and you get towards that nighttime and you've done everything, but you're now getting tired, or normal people would be getting tired, your brain starts to interpret that fatigue as being awake and alive and alert. And so if you notice at night that I'm a little bit more amped up, I'm a little bit more awake, I look less tired, it's because my brain is telling me that I'm not actually less tired, or I'm not actually less tired at night, like physically or anything like that, but your brain tells you that you are. So it's not just that you fall asleep randomly. I can fall asleep really easily all the time, including right now if I wanted to, but it's that you actually become more tired when you're awake, and you become less tired when you would normally be fatigued. It's a weird fucking thing to get used to. Oh, some people can relate this way. Maybe, I don't know. There was a period of time where my brain got confused about being hungry. This is before you make all the jokes about how, like, oh, no wonder. Yeah, I get skinny. No, this is years and years and years ago. There was a time where my brain was confused as to what the signal for hunger and full was. Have you ever had that? Where it's like, you should be hungry, but you look at food, you feel full like right away. And then you could, like, once you got past that eating hurdle and you got to the place where you feel full, you felt like you could just eat for days. Like they got mixed up. And that was really fucking awkward. Cause like, it's kind of hard to eat if you're not hungry. But then once you start eating, like your stomach starts to hurt and stuff, and you're like, oh God, I'm starving. You keep eating. That's not anorexia, Jack. No, God damn it. Again, this is years and years ago, back when I was very healthy weight. So it wasn't a problem. It was just something that I had to overcome. Like a wire got switched. But that's kind of like what narcolepsy is. It's when you have something that is like the normative way your brain would function would be, say, you're tired, go to sleep. Then when you're awake, be awake and alert. Now they're switched. It's very awkward. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah. So when I wake up, it's why I've always kind of done my show, and prior to doing the show, why I worked primarily at night, whether I was doing schoolwork or legal work or any work, or just fun work like writing stories or playing video games, whatever, any of that stuff. It was almost always late at night because that's when I would become alert. So, who knows? The prosecution seeks to prove that before the 2016 presidential election, Trump paid or discussed paying two women, adult film star Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal, not to disclose his alleged affairs with them. He denies affairs with both women. I would not do it. Didn't have an affair. It was no affair. These women, look, they have no trouble. They have no trouble being disgusting or horrid. Stormy Daniels, you could probably see that woman go through a lot of things. Maybe a lot of things go through her. I don't know. I haven't researched all of her videos or all of her movies or whatever. I heard she's a famous actress. I just knew her as Stormy the Mouth. Not in that way. You know what I mean? The one who keeps talking. She's talking all the time. I had to pay her to be quiet. Newsweek sought email comment from Trump's attorney on Tuesday. There's some colorful exchanges when Trump attorney Todd Blanche cross-examined Cohen on Tuesday, referring to one of the latter's social media posts. Blanche said, "You called me a crying little shit, didn't you?" Cohen replied, "Sounds like something I would say." Okay. Okay, sure. This is a weird line of questioning, I guess, because Blanche is, what he's trying to do here is establish that Cohen has personal animus. And so the professor here is going to try and tell us like, well, the jury is not going to, you have to discredit Cohen. If he's got personal animus to the point where he's going after the lawyer, he's going after Trump. Reminder that this is a government witness. Like he is working with the government to prosecute a citizen. This isn't a civil case. This isn't a dispute between two people. One person's like, "Oh man, that other lawyer's like a dick" or whatever. They say it. Like, yeah, no, this is Cohen trying to put Trump in jail and then criticizing his attorney openly while he works with the government. But at the same time, Blanche, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a crying little shit about this. Cohen replied, "Sounds like something I would say." Yeah, he has to own up to all this. Prior to the defense cross-examining Cohen, the prosecution did their direct examination and they attacked all of Cohen's dishonesty, his long history of dishonesty head on. They have to build his credibility by trying undermining the attacks that were coming. They're easy to predict. You just go after everything Cohen's been convicted of and accused of and has been found out about his shitty character of honesty. No wonder he was a well-paid lawyer. But the prosecution tried to undermine the incoming attacks. They had to do that. The defense still has to go after him. They have to convince the jury that this guy is motivated, that he wants to color Trump in such a way that he'll go to jail because of his personal interest in doing so and not because of the pursuit of justice. Now, they're going to say, well, that it's not going to affect the jury that much. But if the jury takes their job seriously and you get to beyond a reasonable doubt as the actual standard, then you go, okay, if we have faith in the jury to do this, then they can say, like if this is a he said, she said thing, maybe. But this is a government thing. This is their witness. This is the best guy they could get to prove this. He's going to come in here and say whatever he wants. He's probably got to deal with him. It's probably going to help him out on his prison stuff, or whatever. Like, maybe you discredit him, and you have to try. They're gonna be like, "Oh, it's not going to work out." Blah 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 blah. Christopher Dominguez, welcome to Paralegal Status. Jim tells you my brain gets so confused. Cue Polish jokes. Yes, Jim, but it's Queue, right? Like it's Q, not K. That's a Mexican Polish joke. Zenothium 15 says, "Your Honor, defense calls Mr. Sargon of Akkad and offers him as an expert. Mr. Akkad, would Trump even with either of these women?" No, he wouldn't. I always want free speech. I do not want speech to be prosecuted or persecuted, and I want jokes to exist and stuff. But could you imagine if Sargon would have had to go and defend his statements against Jen Phillips in court, in England, in GovCucks, where he's like, Mr. Akkad, what did you mean by Jen Phillips? I wouldn't even rape you. Well, it means I wouldn't even rape her. Like, but Mr. Akkad, are you saying that you would not even rape her? Well, yes. Yes, that's what I am saying. Like, could you imagine having to defend these? It's when you get to the like lunacy of how this shit works out. You're like you see what he said, right? Like he wouldn't even do that. And they're like, it's a rape threat. It's like the opposite. It's a non-rape threat. We should be able to make non-rape threats all day, right? I think so. I wouldn't rape any of you. Not even close. You're disgusting to me. Stay away. MNHS06 says, who cares if he paid off women to stop them from talking about an affair? What law did he break? Exactly. That's the thing. They want the sort of popular opinion about this to be about his hush money payments. They want the salacious immorality of Donald Trump to come through and convict him of a crime, but that's not a crime. The crime would be something else. But why am I not covering the Reed case? Because I'm not home most of the day. In fact, I'm going to be, like I said, 2:30. I got to vamonos. So that's how it goes. Unfortunately, that's my daytime schedule right now, but working on it. All right, here we go. Next is back to this story here. So yeah, sounds like something I would say. Cohen's admitting to all that stuff. Why hide it? Cross-examination of Cohen, who was once Trump's attorney and self-confessed fixer, began on Tuesday. Trial doesn't sit on Wednesday, so cross-examine will continue on Thursday. Sweet. Trump defense team's incendiary efforts to impeach Michael Cohen's credibility by introducing evidence of bias are unlikely to overcome the weight of both documentary and testimonial evidence previously adduced by the prosecution. This guy, oh God. There's talking like a person. There's talking like a lawyer. And then there's talking like a fucking academic egghead cunt. Documentary and testimonial evidence previously adduced by the prosecution. Look, man, why is it unlikely to overcome that? Again, this is a statement that's just made. Well, it's unlikely to overcome that. Why? All sorts of stuff goes into a jury decision. The credibility of a key witness by the prosecution and the government's willingness to put an admitted liar with an overt animus and bias towards the defendant on the stand might be enough to overcome damn near anything. Like, look, you get me in a criminal trial, you show me a bunch of documentary evidence, you show me a bunch of testimonial evidence, it's very reliable or whatever, and then you put some guy on the stand that has an open disdain for the defendant, who is complete lack of credibility, is so public. Like, Michael Cohen is more famous for being a liar than he is for being Trump's lawyer. Like, that's how bad his dishonesty is, how deep it runs. You can put that guy on the stand. Why? You don't need him on the stand to establish any of this stuff. So you're going to put Cohen on the stand to bring down Trump because you hate him. Like, you must hate him. That must be the reason you're bringing him. That's not going to help me make the government's case. That puts me as a juror like very distrustful of the government. And it's those types of things that get overlooked. It's like, well, you know, this other evidence is stronger. It's like, but these are people. These are people. Now, the main thing they're relying on is in Manhattan. How in the fuck is Trump going to get a jury that's not 85 to 100% liberal and already hate him? That's a different question. Will the Manhattan jury use it? Would anything work for them? I have no idea. But to just make this blatant statement or blanket statement that, well, I mean, the incendiary efforts to impeach his credibility by introducing evidence of bias, that's not going to work. But why? Why do you say that? Like, to make that assertion, you have to do the same thing that I just did with saying, well, the New York jury The New York jury is not going to be sympathetic to Trump. Well, what's that based off of? I don't know, polling maybe, but that doesn't tell you anything about those specific jurors. And so these statements are fucking frustrating because they come from an egghead professor who's given this false notion of credibility by nature of him being a professor of law, even though he really would not have done any of this that he's claiming to know about. And people are supposed to just listen to him. Prosecutors say that Cohen made the payment to Daniels on Trump's behalf, was later reimbursed, add that it's an illegal campaign contribution because the payment was intended to silence Daniels and thereby influence the 2016 presidential election. So wait. That's an illegal campaign contribution. So Cohen gives Trump $130,000 effectively. Okay. But then I guess Trump paid Cohen to do that. But then isn't that Trump's own money? And can't Trump contribute an unlimited amount of money to his own campaign? Huh? Wow. Again, what's the prosecutorial theory here? Well, it's an illegal campaign contribution. Wait, so Trump pays Cohen, who pays Stormy Daniels on Trump's behalf, which makes it an unlawful contribution to Trump's campaign. But then they think if Trump didn't pay Cohen, it's a different crime. None of this makes any fucking sense. When you get down to this, you have to try and figure out how any of that would make sense. What would be the illegal contribution part? If it came from Cohen's own pocket, sure, I guess Cohen illegally contributed, but how could Trump illegally contribute to his own campaign? But hey, that's the legal theory we're at. D. Huat has gifted 5 memberships. And damn it, I was not planning on doing this. I got to run to the bathroom real quick, which is very frustrating. I wasn't planning on taking a break during the show, but I will be right back post haste. See you guys in just a second.
He drank a fair bit and then realized that his bladder can't handle the liquor inside, leaving us with his chair while he runs up the stairs, hoping the stream doesn't suddenly die. While we are waiting, we'll be laughing at you. The drinking along is what most of us do. The chat is united, getting excited. What you have for us when your being is through. When you have small bladder and no sphincter control, freedom of the liquor doesn't mean freedom from soaking your drawers. Now you're washing your hands and you realize that you've forgotten to scrub both the front and the back. Then you'll grab a quick bite, kiss your lady goodnight, and remember to thank her for all of the snacks. Whoa, water will cure your hangover. Oh, so drink some when the stream is over. When you have small bladder and no sphincter control, freedom of the liquor doesn't mean freedom from soaking your drawers. Soaking your drawers.
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. I decided not to let the whole fucking song run because I wasn't gone that long. I didn't mean to take that long of a break, or I didn't mean to take a break at all today. So here we go. Back to this thing. So again, this guy's making statements about, oh, well, you're not going to overcome the documentary evidence with some notion of bias. Like, but it's not just a notion. This guy overtly hates Trump these days. He wants him to go to jail. He's trying to publish a book. He's doing a media tour. He's doing a bunch of things that we would suggest are improper for a government witness to do in the pendency of a case. It's not just basic, like, well, he's kind of biased sometimes. So like, oh, well, he was a bad ref at my kid's soccer game, so he should go to prison. It's like it's actual bias on a crime that is tepid at best. But we were talking about the again, here they're saying it's an illegal campaign contribution. Okay. But if he's reimbursed again, how can it be a campaign contribution? This is one that's still beyond me. Because like if I'm paying, like I can contribute unlimited amounts of my own money to my own campaign. Cohen was later jailed for illegal campaign contributions. Oh my goodness. Tax fraud and other charges. Now this is an interesting one because if I'm not mistaken, I think Cohen pled to that. Let's see. So let's see, blah, 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 blah. Federal authorities began investigating Cohen in April 2018. He pleaded guilty in August 2018 to charges of tax evasion, making false statements to a federally insured bank, and campaign finance violations. So there you go. Here's the thing with that, though. What they tried to do immediately, both in the media and, mostly the media, but guys like Alvin Bragg, who's the Manhattan DA who's prosecuting Trump here, they tried to paint Cohen's guilty plea to campaign finance violations and tax fraud as evidence of Donald Trump's criminal acts. But that's not what it is. Like, Cohen can do those things and Trump cannot be in any way involved in the criminality of those things. And in a sneakier, grosser level, Cohen could have pled guilty to non-criminal acts. People do it every fucking day. People plead guilty to something that is not, that would not actually get them convicted if they ran through the, a trial process, had proper representation, and the state and the government didn't lie. Good luck with that one. But people plead guilty all the time because it's a risk versus punishment, risk versus reward. They say, well, if you face these charges and you go to trial, you can face up to 15 years in prison if you're convicted on everything. Or we can do a plea deal. You do 18 months in prison, you have 5 years probation, and you pay like $100,000 fine. What do you want to do? You want to do 15 years? You want to do 18 months? And someone goes, shit. Do I roll the dice on 15 years or do I just, take the 18 months and bite it? And they'll plead guilty to criminal acts that they didn't do or that they wouldn't be guilty of because it's less risky than going to prison for much longer. So, whether Cohen pleads guilty or not does not actually make Trump guilty of anything. But here we go. He's now an implacable opponent. An implacable? Is that the right word they want to use? It's unable to, implacable. Okay. Implacable. Unable to be placated. Relentless, unstoppable. All right. So he's an implacable. That's a cool word, I guess. I don't like it. Opponent of Trump, and they've attacked each other's characters on social media posts since the trial began. Alfieri, which one's funnier, though? Implacable? See, but that... It's placate, not placate. It's implacable, placate. Sometimes English is garbage. Sometimes it's just trash. So So between Trump and Cohen, who's funnier at making fun of the other one on social media? That's what I want to know. Alfieri said that the jury doesn't have to like Cohen, only to believe him. Well, yeah. Yes, they only have to believe him. But you know what? Like, it goes a long way in fostering belief in what someone is saying is rapport, likability. Humans are kind of dumb this way. We establish credibility through amicableness. So if someone is likable, if someone is a friend to you, if someone is whatever, you tend to give them more credence than you would otherwise. If someone is not likable to you, you are unlikable. Like John Malkovich said to Marbles in Knockaround Guys, played by Seth Green, you are unlikable. If someone's not likable, we tend to believe them less. Now, I know in The Devil's Advocate, the greatest lawyer movie ever made, like the whole point that Keanu Reeves did to get that guy off for murder was to make him the least likable person ever, right? I guess, like, because that was the strategy. He's like, I'm a lawyer. I win. That's my job. And he's like, becomes a Southern Belle and faints all over the place. Like, that's the strategy, is to make that guy unlikable. And to the point where the jury has to believe that he did the gross thing, not the murder. Okay. I get it. This isn't Devil's Advocate. This is real life. If the jury doesn't like Cohen, they're less likely to believe him. That's kind of the point of character evidence, and why specifically character evidence is often excluded at trial. Because if you can just bias a jury against someone by making them unlikable, then the jury will be less likely to believe them. So very weird statement. Like, yes, it's true. They don't have to like him, only believe him, but like begets belief. So that's strange. The jury needs neither to like nor to fully trust Cohen. This guy is speaking in these technicalities. It's not really how human psychology works. Like, jurors are not autistic compartmentalists. But fuck, hold on one second. Look at how he says this. To return a verdict for the prosecution, it is sufficient that the jury simply credit his testimony for the specific purpose of proving Trump's knowledge and intent, leaving the larger record to speak for itself. Okay, so he's saying that, yeah, the jury doesn't have to like this guy. They don't have to trust him. What they have to do, though, is trust this one specific piece of testimony in this one specific box and ignore everything else they know or feel about this guy just for the purposes of this thing. But that's not how normal people are. Like, normal people don't go, well, I don't trust this guy at all, but on this one thing, I really do. Well, I mean, maybe like Cecil or whatever. They're like, that Cecil guy, hello. Like, I don't trust him on any of this stuff, but if I want to know, like, where the best place to throw feces out a hotel window in New York is, I'm going to ask Cecil every time. Look, I got you. I was at this hotel once, long time ago. Me and my friends were up there, and oh my God, it's a disgusting story. This is the grossest story I've ever told. But yeah, so most people don't work like that, though. And most people that they're being asked to trust aren't caricatures of a real person. Like, Cecil is a caricature of Cecil, right? Like, we don't understand this. Like, there's a guy in there, and Cecil is these certain parts of him that are accentuated that are hilarious. Cohen's not a caricature of Cohen. Cohen just is Cohen to this jury. So they're going to sit there and have to judge all of him. They can't just judge these compartmentalized boxes. Say, well, I trust this one, but not all of the rest. Tom Grawl says, raise a glass for those of us that are at work. Let me see, Tom. What do I got? Oh. I'm just going to do a little tiny bit just for you, Tom. Fedora guy says debate soon. Yeah, Trump and Biden have agreed on a debate on what, June 27th? Should we cover the debate? Maybe we'll cover the debate live. That would be fun. Why did you insult memology? I didn't insult him. Oh my gosh. I love that guy. Tom Grawl, and to all the rest of you who are at work using your time wisely with a silly lawyer in the middle of the day. All right, here we go. He said that Trump's lawyers are trying to show Cohen's bias against Trump through his social media posts, his conflicting financial interests, his previous affiliation with Trump, and his misconduct when answering questions during the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation, which was examining alleged foreign interference in the 2016 election. Oh, yeah, just those things, though. Just those things. Those things don't matter, I suppose. But yeah, that's the end of the article. They have no conclusion here, which is fantastic. But at the end of the day, we come to this. We have this law professor, yeah, saying, well, like, you know, going after his credibility, that's not going to help them at all. What are they supposed to do? What are you supposed to do, homie? Like, if you got Cohen on the stand, he has credibility issues all over the place. He's also massively motivated against Donald Trump, and most of his testimony is going to be firsthand testimony about his personal experiences with Donald Trump. You can't, there's no countervailing narrative other than Trump himself. I didn't do that. I didn't say that to Mike. Mike, we call him Little Mike because Michelle was right. We called her Big Mike. Michelle Obama. Oh, lovely man. Wonderful, wonderful brother. And but we called him Cohen. We called him Little Mike because Big Mike was there, and we didn't want Barack to feel embarrassed when he'd come back for the pickup games of basketball. He's not very good at basketball, really not. He tries to play it from a bicycle. It's not good. I've seen good basketball players a couple times. Larry Bird, one of them, one of the greats. I don't know the rest of their names. I just call them all staff. But like, Trump's the only countervailing narrative to personal interactions with Cohen. So what you have to do is destroy the credibility of Cohen. These are all firsthand stories. What the fuck are you supposed to do other than go after his credibility? If you have a witness or a document that countermands something he says, I mean, I guess you can bring it up, but most of this stuff is going to be, no, I remember Trump telling me to do this. Oh, okay. That's great. That doesn't help anybody at all. White Alakazam says, so if the emperor can foresee or predict the future, is the reason he didn't see his son betraying him is because he can't predict chaos. Getting into 40K lore, so curious. Also down 15 pounds. Whoa, congrats, brother. Most people who get into Warhammer 40K do not go down in weight ever again. So I'm very proud of you for doing that. That's very cool. The Emperor and Foresight are very complicated in the 40K universe. You can go a lot of different ways with it. I would suggest checking out Lutein 09 on YouTube and kind of looking into some of his Emperor videos and some of his videos about like Foresight in the universe and what it looks like. Basically, you come down to the conclusions of either he has the foresight and he chose the right path knowing exactly what would happen, or chaos intervenes and that his foresight wasn't able to predict it, or there's some sort of cloud preventing him from seeing a certain thing, or any number of other sort of issues with it that go to cover up the Deus Ex Machina problem, right? Well, if he's omnipotent, why didn't he see this happening? Well, it's kind of like God with Noah, right? God's like, oh, I'll make man. Oh, they're all fucking bad. I guess they got to wipe the earth out with a flood. It's like, didn't you see this coming? How did you not know? I thought. He's like, well, I saw it coming. He's like, then why the flood for? Like, why? He's like, oh, I got to find a righteous man. I don't even know where one is. Someone else was like, Noah, that guy. He's like, oh yeah. Like, didn't you know that? How the hell? There's a problem with trying to explain omniscience, omnipotence, future soothseeing, whatever the fuck you want to call it. If you can predict the future, why didn't you do it better? It's like Dick Masterson's line. One of my favorite lines that he ever said is, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? But it's like, if you can see the future, why'd you fuck up so often? And the Emperor, maybe he didn't. That's actually the thing. Maybe the Emperor didn't fuck it up. The other element of that is if you go both to Christianity and the Emperor in 40K, oh God, we're making this comparison now. But no, you implement the element of chaos of humanity into it, and it's like you just say the free will negates prediction. Maybe. I don't know. But go for it. Like, try and figure that out. I have no idea. Wait, Lutein went woke? Well, I didn't think he was ever non-woke. I just thought he was kind of new. I just thought the content was neutral, but how do you go woke? Steel Toe Show says, thanks for favor, buddy. I was done with her. You're welcome, I guess. I don't know who favor is, but I guess she's cool. All right, let's what am I not looking at today? The MS Gentleman. I'm not looking at as much today because no, I don't. I'm trying to keep time going. Not, you know what I mean? I'm trying to keep going on time because I do have a shorter show today by logistical nature. So, wrapping up the Cohen thing, look, they have to discredit Cohen. He has huge credibility problems. This egghead professor, I fucking hate these professors. I hate all of the academic cast of commentariat, right? Like all of these people are like, well, this and this and this. It's like, but you aren't human anymore. You lost your humanity when you got a doctorate. Like it's gone. You cast it asunder. You stopped living in the world and you started living in an ivory tower of books and circle jerk research papers and peer review that was in exchange for dark and sweaty things. Like you no longer operate in this aspect of humanity that the rest of us do, and certainly not that jurors do. Jurors are the everyman. Like you're not getting, this isn't an insult. Jurors are not, this group of 125 plus IQ scholars. Like they're just normal people that span the spectrum from somewhere between 90 and 110 IQ on average. And you might have some really smart ones. Now they're going to weed out ones that are like completely incompetent. So when you get down into like disability levels of IQ, you're not going to have jurors in that too often. Jokes about some cases going the wrong way, but you're not going to have that too often because they're not going to be intelligible of their surroundings and the the duties and obligations of a juror, and they'll be weeded out that way. But you're rarely going to have exceptionally smart jurors. You'll have intelligent jurors and you'll have average jurors on balance. These are not people who spend their years and 1991 to now as a professor at the same law school in Miami, as a professor of law. What insight do you have into the world that people live in, that these jurors live in? Like, are you going and, are you engaging in the activities that they do every day? Like, do you get done with your construction job and go sit at a bar, like hoping that you're not going to get furloughed for 3 weeks while the next project comes along? Like, do you do this stuff? No. Who do you associate with? Why should we trust you on what jurors are going to think and not going to think? What's going to be useful and not useful to this panel of 12 people that he's never met? Satan Millennial, I'm not ignoring you on purpose. It's just I have less focus on all these different places, but we'll get back to it. Oh shit. I mentioned God. Now we've got trouble. Crafting with Bits says RE God /flood. He wants us to love him, requires free will /choice. No love without choice, just my 200 cents. Well, thank you. No, I agree with that, but this is more about seeing the future, right? If God could see how all this would turn out, like, and then maybe that's it. He's like, well, I know it's going to happen, but shit, we got to push the domino. I don't know. I don't buy it. I just think it's probably more complicated. Or maybe it's not. Who knows? All right. We got to get to the next story here. And this one really, this one makes me simultaneously happy and unhappy. I'm hopefully going to get to the whiskey story. If not, we'll bring the whiskey story to tonight's show. But this one is This one's ripe for the kind of commentary I like to do. This is a Supreme Court judge in Hawaii, the Hawaii Supreme Court justice, tearing down the Supreme Court conservatives, right? Because when they're tearing down the Supreme Court in the media now, it's the conservatives that they're after, right? That's what they're doing, because they're never tearing down like Sotomayor. First of all, she's too big to tear down. Second of all, like the media wouldn't really cover it. They don't care. But when they're tearing down conservative justices, they get a voice. Conservative justices are on the chopping block. They're in the crosshairs. They are the target of the media because they want to change in the composition and behavior of the court, and they're trying to leverage public perception against the court. Hell, they got the court to adopt a code of ethics. It's an unenforceable code of ethics. No one can bind the Supreme Court to anything, including the Supreme Court. It can't bind itself to a code of ethics. That's unconstitutional. Now, there already is a binding code of ethics in one sense, and that is that Congress has the power to impeach Supreme Court justices in the same way that they have the power to impeach anybody else. So if a justice is behaving poorly or unethically, Congress can impeach them, but that becomes a political fight against a neutral body by a partisan body, a presumptively neutral body. No one thinks the Supreme Court is actually neutral anymore, but it becomes a partisan, or it becomes a public fight, a battle over political capital. And the Supreme Court has a lot of political capital. Congress acts like the Supreme Court is becoming less popular. Maybe they are, but almost no one's as unpopular as Congress on the whole. Individual congressmen may be particularly popular or unpopular in certain places, but on the whole, Congress is very, very low on the popularity sector. So when they go to war with the Supreme Court, who's been pretty high up there, even though their credibility may be reduced or their political capital may be lower than it was, it's still pretty high. It's still pretty high comparatively. Trust in the Supreme Court is eroding, though, because these people want trust in the Supreme Court to erode. They want to diminish the court. And that's the crazy thing. They'll do it all under the guise of making the court more credible. And to do so, they slam and slap the credibility of the court. That's their entire purpose, is the opposite of what they say, because they want to have political power over the court. They want to have that political capital to go after the court with impunity rather than the other way around. The court doesn't really have a mechanism for going after Congress. They can, find their laws unconstitutional or whatever. But if they're doing that, obviously, because they don't like Congress, they're going to run into problems. The only check they have is to say, no, this thing doesn't work. Congress has multiple ways. They can strip jurisdiction of some cases from the Supreme Court. They can set up other alternative courts to handle certain issues. They can impeach members of the court. They can change the number of justices ostensibly through the Judiciary Act, even though that's not really a thing. And the other thing they can do, they could effectively, I guess, limit the court's pay, right? They hold the purse strings there. And they can also pass laws to get around. The Supreme Court strikes down something is unconstitutional. They can pass another law that looks very similar, but gets rid of the specific problem that the court had. So Congress has a lot of ways to fight against the court. The court doesn't have a lot of ways to fight back. So we have Congress and the media and the president going up against the court, particularly the conservatives on the court. The whole goal is to build up enough political capital or political will to reshape the court into something that these people all want. And they all want the same sort of thing. They want a more liberal court. They want one that is more deferential to liberal policies and ideas. They want a court that shifts with them, not with the times. They want a court that shifts with them. And they want to get rid of ideas like originalism. They want to get rid of textualism. They want to be able to interpret things on the fly in the manner that they want at that moment. And so now we have Slate doing an article series on originalism here. I'll pull this up real quick. So this is part of how originalism ate the law. a Slate series about the legal theory that ruined everything by Dahlia Lithwick and Mark Joseph Stern. Now, this is an interview with the Supreme Court Justice who decries the horrors and treacheries coming from SCOTUS. Have you guys noticed horrors and treachery coming from the Supreme Court of the United States? Because these guys' version of horrors and treachery, horrors and treachery is Stormy Daniels and that other. Horrors and treachery are like overturning Roe versus Wade and just returning abortion control back to the states. Protecting the Second Amendment, for example. Horror and treachery, right? Like that's what they're talking about. You guys noticed any? I haven't really seen any horror or treachery from Supreme Court. It's hard to imagine them doing that anyway, because they're either allowing Congress to do something or not. So what horror or treachery are they creating? None. They're just doing stuff. Or they're just allowing or disallowing stuff. So this is the Hawaii Supreme Court Justice. It gets very apropos to have a white man lead, ruling over Hawaii's court system. But we're going to read through this interview because I think it's useful. It's a useful look into people who have a liberal leaning legal perspective. Wait, is this stupid thing? Oh, no, we're not going to. I thought maybe they had a link to this audio, which would be goddamn infuriating, but have a liberal leading judicial perspective. And it's fine. Like, it's fine to have a judicial theory of liberalism and an updating constitution. I mean, I think it's wrong, but people have it. It's not inherently evil or whatever. And I do think, well, we'll go on record saying it. As I said earlier about originalism is a legal philosophy or judicial philosophy that says that the original meaning of the text at the time it's adopted is what really matters and needs to be preserved. And to me, that is about predictability, reliability of the words on the fucking page. If you know what was meant at the time, you can always know what was meant at the time, and you can always follow what was meant at the time. It becomes knowable. It becomes predictable and reliable. If you have a different system where you say, well, what was meant at the time doesn't matter because it changes along with our understanding of reality, then what's written on the page doesn't matter at all. Because if our perceptions of reality change, then our understanding of the words on the page change. But what if you're not up on the change? What if you're not in agreement with the change? It becomes then unpredictable and unreliable. You cannot in any way tell what law you're under if it's based on the whimsy of some congressman. And remember, congressmen by and large are terrible people who should all go to hell, especially if their last name is in first name, Ted Kennedy. He's already there. Okay, so perhaps no lower court judge has condemned the U.S. Supreme Court's reliance on bogus history and racist values as sharply as Hawaii Supreme Court Justice Todd Edens. Now, briefly, when they say racist values, what they mean is whatever justice in the past or whatever Congress in the past wrote this, that person was racist, therefore the idea is bad. This is a logical fallacy, and it's a fucking doozy of one. It's a genetic fallacy. The source of the commentary becomes the reason the commentary is false. Well, no, that's not how logic works. A statement or an assertion is either correct or incorrect, true or false, however you want to put it. The source of the statement does not make it true or false, does not make it correct or incorrect. It may make you more likely to believe it or not, right? Like, obviously, if Obama says something, I believe it less than if I do. If Trump says something, I believe it more than if I say something, right? Like, that's a joke, actually. But like the whole idea is that your belief does not have actually any impact on the truth or falsity of a statement either. So the genesis of the statement, its origin, its place of being spouted is irrelevant to its veracity. Okay. So when you say, well, these racist opinions, it's like, well, the racist opinions of someone doesn't make something that they wrote right or wrong. Even if what they wrote is based on racism, that's the actually really difficult part for people to get around too. It's like, well, if it's a racist thing that they said or did, it still doesn't make it true or not true. Either way, like it's either true or not true. Whether or not it's unfair or racist or whatever is irrelevant. Again, when we get down to the purity of the statement. Now, this guy is saying, well, these racist values, like racist values don't have anything to do with tons of law that's out there. So, Hawaii Supreme Court Justice Todd Edens, in several scathing opinions, Edens has decried the conservative supermajority. It's a 6-3, but it's not a 6-3. It's actually a 5-4. Supermajority, Jesus Christ. Supermajority's radical reversal of settled precedent in the name of a conservative theory, originalism that's both dangerously retrograde and totally unworkable. Now, hilariously, they're saying, wait, they're overturning precedent, but they're applying racist values. You know, one of the most recently overturned landmark Supreme Court decisions was before Roe versus Wade was Korematsu. It was Korematsu versus the United States. That's when we decided that anyone who is of Japanese origin, whether they were a citizen or not, got to go to internment camps during World War II if they were on the West Coast and in Nevada or whatever. And then we took their farms, like their almond farms that were really like good quality, and we gave them to white people. They're like their per acre value was something like 4 times, or it's like 3 or 4 times the white farmer of California's per acre value, because they just had better value land. And then all that land went. Korematsu, those racist values shouldn't be overturned, I guess, because willy-nilly overturning precedent. Wait, so which racist values are better? Which ones? Never know. In Tuesday's Slate Plus bonus episode, they have a bonus episode of Amicus, Dahlia Lithwick, and Mark Joseph Stern interviewed the justice about his very public criticisms of SCOTUS and his embrace of the state constitutionalism to limit the fallout in Hawaii. Their conversation has been edited and condensed for clarity. Thanks. Thank you for that. So Mark Stern says, you've written very powerfully that judges are not historians. And yet it seems that the U.S. Supreme Court is calling upon all lower courts to play the role of amateur dilettante historian. Can you talk about some of the practical problems with that? Now, they're referring here to Bruin. Bruin is the National Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. It's the case that basically reinforced the Second Amendment and says that the history and tradition of law must be the bolstering or the reason that you're implementing a regulation that infringes on the Second Amendment. Now, listen to how this works and what they're saying. So they're saying that the Supreme Court is asking judges to become amateur historians, but they're not, though. Not in any way. The way our system works is it's an adversarial system. It means both sides bring to the table their best arguments. So with Bruin, you have to have a regulation meeting the history and tradition of regulation in the United States if it's going to infringe on the Second Amendment. It's not that hard. Not hard to figure out. If you want to pass a law that infringes on the Second Amendment, you have to have a historical analog, either a direct comparison or something that's analogous enough to apply to the thing you're doing now. Because, for example, in 1791, if you're going back that far, or even in 1868, they didn't really have the same type of, say, automatic firearm or semi-automatic firearm. They may not have had the same caliber of bullets, but you could say, well, but if these different calibers are regulated, we can infer that other calibers could be regulated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like that makes sense. So you have to have enough of an analog in the history and tradition of the United States to preserve your regulatory scheme. It's like, well, you're asking judges to be historians. No, you're not. Actually, you're asking the lawyers to bring the historical analog to support it, because that's what they have to do. And the burden is on the government every single time in this. The government has to show the historical analog. They have to show the history and tradition. The judge does not go find it. Trust me, if you are bringing a case or you're defending a case and you're like, yeah, judge, well, I don't know, pretty sure it does comply with the history and tradition of guns or whatever. It's just like, where? Like, somewhere. Maybe. Why don't you go find it, asshole? If you do that, you lose. So what the judge is to do is the same thing that the judge does in every other fucking case. And I'm sorry, amateur historian. Every historian's an amateur. I don't care who you are, but amateur everybody in everything. Yeah, judges are not specialized by and large in any particular subject other than law, if even that. So what happens is the two parties who are adversarial bring their best case. And in this case, the government would bring the historical analog. They'd say, here we go. Here is this. These regulations are analogous to this regulation that we intend to pass. Therefore, it should bypass the Bruin test. We should be okay here. And then it would be the other entity's opportunity to say why the analog is bad. It is not up to the judge to be a historian and figure out if the thing is sufficient or existed or whatever. All they have to do is the government has to bring the analog, and the opposing party has to just say why it's wrong. And the judge just determines which one of those is the better argument. Or if it goes to a jury, I guess at the lower courts, but really you're going to get into the legal arguments in the appeals courts and the Supreme Court eventually. Which one of these is correct? Either the regulation existed and is analogous to the current regulation, or it didn't. Like, that's it. They're not asking the judge to find this. They're not asking the judge to pull out like the prolific nature of this regulation either. That's all on the government. It's all on the attorneys to do. It's very dumb that he's suggesting that this is on these judges. Can you talk about some practical problems with that? Justice Todd Edens. In a wonderful opinion, a federal judge wrote that we are not trained as historians. We practice law, not history. Do you practice law as a judge? I don't know. I don't think so. I am the law. And that's the problem. And by the way, judges dabble in history constantly. Originalism aside, history permeates and pervades, especially high-level arguments about constitutionality. It's not originalism's fault, but they started noticing by their constant looks at history that maybe originalism had a point. I think real historians, not you fake historians out there, look at the judiciary with shock to see we think history has such certitude. What? And we don't have the opportunity or even the ability to weigh into the rigor of historical methodology and historical integrity when deciding cases. No, you know what? I have seen serious historians assertively assert that Muslims made boats and made it here first to America from Muslim land. Like that they made giant African Muslim canoes or whatever, and they Allah paddled their way across the probably the Pacific because they were backwards people, across the Atlantic Ocean, and they got here first, and Muslims settled the Americas along with the native, which of course they're friendly with the Native Americans, and like then the white people got here from the rest of Europe. We're like, aha, we did it. And the Muslims were like, no, but they were killed during their fourth prayer to Allah or something. Like, serious credentialed historians assert theories like this. And we're supposed to the rigor of historical methodology and historical integrity. What the fuck are you talking about? What rigor? Bet this guy owns some rigor. How are supposed, I guess we, to decide what is history? How do we decide what is history? It's fucking Matt Walsh over here. What is a woman? What is history? Oh, I don't know. The thing that happened. That's history. And remember, guys, this is all in the context, specifically when we're talking about Bruin, what law was passed in the past? What regulation existed? There's a book that has it written down. You can go find it. It's not like it's not like, oh my God, we need an anthropologist in here to determine what regulation these footprints were following. Let's take plaster casts and send them off to MIT for laser analysis. No, like you just go to the book, you go to the register, Federal Register, and you go, was this law in existence? Like, does this one here? Is there an analog to this? Do we have some regulation that maybe got forgotten because it was over, it was taken out later? Like, what thing did we have? Was it a temporary measure because we really didn't want black people owning guns at some particular point when we were trying to enslave them, make them pick cotton? Which thing was it? But it's there. It's there. It doesn't need interpretation. The regulation either existed or not. The ensuing argument about the analogy is a different question. But what is history? Well, in terms of the history and tradition of the United States is in regards to regulation. What is history is what is written in the Federal Register. That's it. That's what fucking history is. They wrote it down. It's all there. Anyway, my God. Do we outsource it to AI? Oh yeah, that'll be funny. Guys, we're looking for 1792 law, and all it's doing is giving us pictures of Hitler. Do we deputize our law clerks as historians? Look at the mindset of this person. It's subtle. It's not subtle. It's an overt look at how these people view the world. Why do you need to deputize a law clerk as a historian? There's no license for historians. You don't pass a historian's test. You don't become a historian with like some medal and certificate and a special thumbprint that you get into the historian fucking section of the video store. Like what are we talking about? Do we deputize our law clerks as historians? I know but your law clerk might have to look through the Federal Register. And actually what your law clerk has to do is look at the citations brought in by both sides. Like that would be the main thing, and make sure they're saying what they assert they're saying. Do we rely on partisan amicus briefs? Maybe. Shockingly, the partisan nature of an amicus brief has nothing to do with whether or not a regulation existed earlier in this country's history. I don't want to do that. What do you want? But it seems like the United States Supreme Court tends to cherry pick history that way. Oh, yes. It's always the cherry picking of history, and how this guy does. He's definitely not cherry picking here. This is great. Then you run into the problem of whose history are we really talking about anyway? The white men history here. There's certainly a few white men who decided things back centuries ago when women and people of color were excluded from public participation and deliberation. The halcyon days, not having to listen to women when deciding something important. Oh my God, could you imagine? Their views are non-existent. So it's absolutely impossible to try and root around in history and excavate 18th and 19th century experiences and try to apply them to 21st century problems. Yeah, it's impossible. You're right. Since women and black people were not allowed to deliberate in politics, I guess, even though that's completely fucking untrue. Oh my God. Do you know that Texas had a female governor in 1835? No, wait, 1830? No, 1935. It's kind of cool. And she wasn't the first female governor of a state at all. It's like, holy shit. They made mistakes back then. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's because Kristi Noem, guys. Because she's shooting all these dogs. She's like the ATF of governors. Blam, blam. That dog's retarded. Blam, blam. That dog's biting people. Blam. It's coming right for me. Blam. It's kind of cute, though. But, yeah, just because they couldn't participate, I guess, in politics and deliberation. Oh, well, we can't possibly figure out any of their experiences. Oh, I don't know. I watched Roots. I can figure out some experiences. I guess it was the racist white guy who wrote Roots who's like figured out, or who was like telling me the story of how great it was for black people back then? That's probably him. That's right. How could we possibly figure out what was going on? I don't know. What are we going to root around history? But remember that this motherfucker is talking specifically about finding existing legislation. You don't have to do this. You don't need to find 18th and 19th century experiences of women to know that there's not a regulation banning school shootings. They didn't happen back then. Why? I don't know. Not because people didn't want to shoot kids. It's really because it's just like school systems were so completely fucking different. Like if you had a school massacre back then, it was just a family killing itself. But these aren't hard to unravel and unpeel, these historical experiences, and they're also unnecessary to the question of whether or not there's a historical analog. Is there a historical analog of banning guns? Like, well, we don't know what kind of mass violence was going on with muskets back then. It's like, it doesn't matter, actually. Just because if they wrote a law about it, then there's a law. If they didn't write a law about it, then there isn't a law. That's the only question that we have. That's... Aside from being so whacked out and silly, it's just not practically possible. Why not? This guy is seriously saying because women and black people were disempowered or disenfranchised or whatever. Actually, they weren't disenfranchised. They would have had to be enfranchised first. So they were just not franchised. Like they were like that McDonald's that gets sued because it's not part of the company. Just because they're disenfranchised in these centuries that we can't possibly figure out anything about them. It's not practically possible. And yet we presume to know so much about all of the experiences of all these disenfranchised pizzas. That's just Italians. And people who still are illiterate. So they have to have their history written by the Greeks. But these disenfranchised people, we're still able to figure out what their history looked like. We're still able to do that. They actually still have a diaspora of written works by these disenfranchised people that give specific insight to the lives of the disempowered. They log this shit and pump it into every goddamn university class they can these days. And then some weird dreadlock bespectacled mongrel comes out eating a whole bunch of like fried chicken, puffy Cheetos, and bananas and starts praising the university or like the community college that happened to include some guy with 9 apostrophes in his name's biography into their class on basket weaving. We're like, why the hell is this in this class? Why does this class exist? Actually, now I'm really confused. And why does this mutant get to run around looking like a pumpkin with AIDS and tell us anything was important ever? Yes, I'm talking to you, Maya Angelou. I don't like Maya Angelou. Rick Nikita says, you are gay. Get EVS back on. You need a pie-eating man in your life. That's true. Everybody does. Dallas Guy 98 says, Wyoming had the first woman elected. Was a virtue signaling accident. No wonder no one lives there. I actually like Wyoming. They have bison that you eat. So then she comes back. Dahlia Lithwick, who we must remember in better days would not have been listened to at all. I'm hearing you say a couple different things. I'm sorry. That is literally that's probably the most uttered phrase of a woman, of any woman, anywhere ever. I'm hearing you say a couple of different things. Oh, here we go. Right. One is that this is not doable. This is not our job. Another is that it's insane to put a thumb on the scale, and somehow carve out women and people of color who are expressly excluded from participating in the moment of constitutional deliberation that we're now enshrining as the only viable moment. And then you're saying this third thing, which is that, by the way, this is a completely bonkers way to organize public life right now because technology has changed so rapidly. When was he talking about technology changing rapidly? Like what the hell does that have to do with anything that he said? I don't even know. She says, all those things are certainly reasonable critiques of originalism. Wait, are they? I'm sorry. Show your work, Dahlia. At what point are any of those things reasonable critiques of originalism? Just because you say it doesn't make it so. What makes anything about what you just said a reasonable critique of originalism? Well, technology exists and it moves rapidly. Okay. But originalism, though. All right. Well, I mean, we can't put our thumb on the scale and carve out black people and women. Why? Because originalism carved out black people and women. So we can't do that. Well, maybe we can't now, but they could then and did. Well, how do we understand it? Because they carved out black people and women. Like you realize that that's what happened in the common understanding of who they're talking about. And you have to apply it that way. And then if you don't like it, you just fix it. It's that simple. That's the crazy thing. They act like everything is set in stone. But all laws and even the Constitution itself can be amended to account for these problems, perceived problems, whatever they are. How are these critiques of originalism, though? There's certainly reasonable critiques of originalism, but you have chosen to do something different. Oh, wow. How brave. Which is to weave them into your judicial opinion writing. I'm very curious. There you go. Remember activism from the bench? Here's a guy like activisming actively. Now, I'm very curious what led you to start using your work to offer these very public critiques, which are very meta and usually not what jurists do. You know why? Why they're not what jurists do? There's a good reason. They're useless. Edens. So this is the judge again. And this is another one of these telling ideas about why these people judge and act in the way they do. I think a lot of federal judges are effectively silenced. Oh, yeah. They don't have any way to talk. They don't feel they're able to really critique what the high court's doing. Well, they can critique it. They just have to apply the law that exists. That's the crazy thing is they can definitely critique what the Supreme Court has done. But the Supreme Court says what the state of the law is. They're bound. They're bound by the higher courts. And you want it that way. That's what makes them a lower court. But state courts are not beholden to the United States Supreme Court. I mean, you kind of are. You are, though, actually. We are essentially insulated when we decide things based on state constitutional provisions. Let me pause you right there, Edens. Can I call you Edens? You are bound to provide the minimum bar of the United States Constitution's protection of individual liberties to the people of your state. You can make whatever ruling you want, but Bruin will always apply in Hawaii as the Supreme Court wants it to, not as your stupid Supreme Court wants it to, even though you have a state provision, a state constitutional provision that almost directly mirrors the U.S. one. The United States Supreme Court's protection of the individual right to keep and bear arms prevails over the state one every time. So you can say that you're insulated. You're not essentially insulated. You have to provide the minimum. Imagine if they said, well, our Constitution has a free speech provision, therefore we can decide that means no free speech. Well, no, you have to do at least the free speech guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States to the citizens of Hawaii. So here we go. He says, and as I've sat out here in my office in the middle of the Pacific over the past few years and watched what's come out of the U.S. Supreme Court, I realized I had the opportunity to really voice some of these thoughts that have been percolating in my head. Like Mary J. Blige or whatever. Get it percolate. Is that Mary J. Blige? I think I have a responsibility to speak out against the horrors and treachery that goes on at the highest court in the nation. No, you actually don't. You don't have that responsibility at all. I mean, it's absolutely astounding that originalism revives the value judgments of a racist. Listen to this. Originalism revives the value judgments. This is important. Of a racist, misogynistic, homophobic society and constrains the value judgments of contemporary judges. Okay. First of all, homophobia was invented recently because homos didn't exist in colonial times. This isn't, they're a self-correcting problem. Like it's like, well, there's one. I don't talk to him. He's kind of weird queer or whatever. Like, and then they just go homophobic. What was there to be homophobic against in 1830? Right? Like, was there, we've got a pride flag. It's like, that wasn't a thing. Like they weren't protesting for equal rights. They're saying, oh my God, I'm looking for one butthole that won't shoot me. What are we talking about? But beyond the silliness of that statement, value judgments of racist, misogynistic, homophobic societies is not racism, sexism, and homophobia. It's the value judgments he's talking about, which is crazy because those value judgments are irrelevant, or while the racism, the misogyny, and the homophobia are irrelevant to the value judgments made, except when those value judgments are based specifically on those three traits. So just because someone, like, if you ask someone what the best steak is, and they say a ribeye, it doesn't matter if they're racist or not. The ribeye is either the best steak or it's not. Like that's just it. Their value judgment of a ribeye is unrelated. They're like, but I really hate Jews. Ribeye is the best steak. By the way, have I told you about the Jews today? Like, oh, I don't know if I can trust this value judgment of beef because he really doesn't like Jews. I mean, that's very telling. No, it isn't. And so this guy, again, these people conflate contemporary to a point in history value judgments with the validity of an idea that is unrelated to the value judgment or unrelated to the alleged bad thing. And we also do this presentism fallacy that's going on that says that the misogyny, homophobia, and racism of the past is bad automatically, and the current meta is good. And actually, not just good, but the current meta is the best ever. We are currently the best people that humanity has ever been. All previous history is just a bunch of rude baboons running around with stupid ideas, and we're better because we're now. But presentism is, at the end of the day, a fallacy. You may think that racism is bad. I do, like, unless it's funny. Like, I think it's bad most of the time. Except when I want fried chicken, I'm like, you know who I'm going to buy fried chicken from? Not me, not a skinny white guy. I wouldn't buy fried chicken from me. I wouldn't trust that at all. I'd probably pick an anemic chicken. I mean, do I look outdoorsy? It's probably a pigeon anyway. That's like going to a fucking, oh man, I was at Valley Fair, the amusement park in Minnesota when my parents and I first moved up here. And we got fried chicken from one of the restaurants. It's like this little, like, shriveled up, nasty thing. It's like we had just come from Houston, Texas, where all of the fried chicken is made by nobody of our pigment, and or of our diabetes category, which is diabetes free. And so, like, all the fried chicken down there is great. And then you come up here and you order fried chicken, you get like a fried canary or something. It's like a chicken nugget with bones. And we're like, what the hell is this? That'd be the chicken you'd buy from me. No, you buy it from big fat black grandma who's like cooking it in a cast iron pan, calling you sugar. That's the woman you want to buy fried chicken from. Okay. So, like, that's racism, by the way. That's like, no, I disregard everybody except her. She knows what she's doing. I can see it on her thighs, which just span for days. But so I think racism is bad, except when it's funny or correct. And like, so, but racism was useful at a time, right? Like, different tribes are like seeing people in like, you're in like a fucking tent, you're a nomadic society. And you're like, what are all those white people doing? Oh, they're giving us blankets. No, the Indians probably should have been more racist. Like, I don't want blankets from them. I'm going to go to TJ Maxx and buy a used blanket. No, like, why are you? That's the used blankets were the problem though. But like, they should have been more racist. It would have saved them. Probably not actually. But you get the idea. Like, we just place our current value system at all points in history and say, well, we're better now. It's like, well, okay, try it. When the Mongol horde's invading and pushing all the way into, wherever you are, or the Persians are coming. It's like, oh, we can't distrust them just because they're Persian. Hello, Greece. But there's reasons that all this stuff happened. Like, it's not like they just made it up. They're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, Canadians suck. No, that's true. I'm just kidding, Canadians. Jesus. But you can't just sit there and go, well, all of their values were wrong because these values I disagree with. And that's presentism. That's the historian's fallacy. It's all this shit. And these are the people who are making some of the most important decisions in the fucking country. That's what bothers me about it. Because you're talking about times when human beings enslaved other human beings. Now, that happens now. It happens now directly. It's not legal in the United States, but it happens now all over the place. It happens constantly through things like human trafficking. Oh, here in my shitty little town, Wilmer, well, the town that's near me, they had a Chinese massage parlor. It's still there. But the cops responded. The cops responded to a distress call from this Chinese massage parlor. And they get there, and this lady who barely speaks any English, she speaks a lot of Chinese though. She's like, the manager has kept me locked in a room for days, won't give me water and no access to a cell phone. Like, so they're not able to play Candy Crush or drink water, and they don't get any food. And then all they're allowed to do is come out during the day and give massages to like weird guys and give them happy endings. And if they don't do the happy endings, like they're a bad employee. And they're not paid though. And so then they're talking to the owner and they're like, what the hell is this? You got this chick enslaved, like locked up in this room here. And they eventually find the room. We'll talk about that in a minute. They're like, you got this chick locked up in a room and you're making her come out and give like happy endings to weird fat guys. And he's like, she's not good at it. She's not good at the happy ending. She doesn't want to do it. So I didn't put her in slavery. I hit her in the face. And he goes and gets a security video of him calling her a bad employee for not giving hand jobs to guys and punching her in the face. He's like, see, not a slave. And they're like, all right, you're under arrest. So they arrest this guy. That was a brilliant strategy by him. And they haul him away. And then they go and look inside and they find like this secret little alcove room with a bunch of crusty cell phones that are all broken on the ground. They're obviously taken away, and like a chain and a bed and like a bucket, you know, like slavery still exists, dude. It's all over the place. But let's not even get into concepts of like corporate slavery or government enslavement, how tyranny fucking enslaves the masses. You're a Hawaii Supreme Court justice. You're a Supreme Court justice supporting one of the most corrupt states in the United States by far, beholden to the Japanese interests in Hawaii. Oh my God. You're going to sit here and talk about slavery? Good. Ask the native Hawaiians, Mr. White Supreme Court Justice, how much they trust their Japanese politicians and overlords there. Talk about slavery. Ask them how they get contracts. And if those contracts are favorable when the Japanese companies decide to dole one out to a Hawaiian construction company. Ask about slavery then. Happens all the fucking time. It's like, oh, we're so much better. Are we? We just figured out how to monetize it better? Like, cool. Like if you could live stream slavery and get super chats on it, would that be okay? That'd be funny. This guy's all about like changing ideas, changing concepts, changing technologies, yet he's ignoring the fact that all of these human institutions that are bad, like slavery and racism or whatever, we just find new ways to do it. Again, these things started with some sort of purpose. People distrusted other people based on their differing looks because they were dangerous. We do the same thing in so many ways, and now we do it in the opposite. We're like, oh, look at the poor little darker than me. Oh my God, I gotta help him. Probably doesn't know how to use stairs, so I'll put in an elevator. Like, what are we talking about? Racism exists and then secretly he's like, I hope he doesn't steal my wallet, right? Like, we still do all the damn things. They're facets of humanity. We just find ways to make it look not as bad. God damn it. When women were just an appendage of their husband, had no contractual rights and no property rights. Yeah, you're going to have to rethink that one there, homie. Oh, Jesus Christ. What appendage? Sounds like a second. No, it makes no sense for contemporary society to pledge allegiance to the founding era's culture. Wait, what? Again, why does it make no sense? And where are we doing that actually? Like, those are two different questions. That's just a statement. It makes no sense. Well, one, tell me why. And two, where's it happening? And I had the opportunity to write that. I'm lucky to have such a supportive court. They said, go for it, because that's what we collectively believe. Oh, wonderful. Lithwick says, for a lot of judges who are trying to apply all these new tests coming out of the Supreme Court, there's this deep sense of nihilism, because suddenly everything is new. It's all new. Wait, no, it isn't. What is new? Like, honestly, oh my God, the law has changed so dramatically all the time. Not really. Actually, not at all. We're in a wholly different world, yet there are normative reasons why we need to have a dependable, predictable interpretation of the Constitution. You know what's a dependable, predictable interpretation of the Constitution, actually, though? Like originalism. You know what's funny is, like, when you go with what's his face, like stupid Stephen Breyer, and be like, well, we gotta consider the times that we're in when we're talking about the Constitution, this analysis. No, that's not predictable. The predictable one is, well, what they said is what they meant, and that's still what they mean now. If we don't like what they said, then what they meant, we could just say something new. Like, that's predictable. But the other interpretation is not. And that was one thing I read in your Wilson opinion, the sense that we need to know what the law is. Yes, it's what it is what it was when they said it. It's really not hard. Why is this so difficult for these fucking people? Guys, their argument is like, well, we need to know what the law is. So we have two options. The law is what it was when they said it, or the law is what someone thinks of it now. Which one is predictable at all? Obviously, the one that we go, okay, that's what it meant when they said it. That's what it means now. We go, well, it's what I think it means now, right? Like Sotomayor or Kagan or Ketanji Brown Jackson or Clarence Thomas, like Kavanaugh. Oh my God, John Roberts. John Roberts doesn't know what law he's talking about in the average minute because he's a flip-flopper. How are we supposed to rely on what they think the law is predictable or reliable? You can't. It can't just be etch-a-sketched, erased, and rewritten on the fly. This is literally what they want to do. They're talking absolutely backwards, and it's amazing. Eden says, when precedent is for suckers, and we don't know whether settled law will become unsettled every June. Homie. Did you like that whole Dred Scott opinion? That was settled law. So is Korematsu. There's tons of settled law you don't want. It was settled for a really long time. Dred Scott was like, oh yeah, you owned a black guy, and then you moved to a place where it was illegal to own a black guy, but you still owned him. And then you moved back to a place where it's legal to own a black guy. Now the black guy wants to get out of being owned. Like, but fuck you, black guy, you're still owned. But it was illegal to own me back there. Too bad. Missed your opportunity. It's legal to own you again now, sucker. He sent my wife away. Too bad. You're still owned. He was a government agent. Yeah, that's why you're still owned. No, that's settled law. It's good. Brown versus Board overturned settled law of separate but equal. That whole separate but equal thing that was around, like, oh, well, separate but equal is good. That was settled law too. It's like, oh my God, they just went completely against precedent. Yeah. I thought that was like probably the thing we wanted them to do at the time. Maybe. I don't know. Actually, a bunch of black people didn't want the results of Brown versus Board, because what they did is they fired all the black teachers at the black schools, and they sent all the black kids to the white schools, and they just didn't hire black teachers at the white schools because they were full or whatever. They're like, hey, this didn't work out the way we wanted it to. We wanted to keep our black schools. Like, oh, nope. Don't forget, we're still racist. The judicial opinion didn't change the existing racism. Like, that was still going to happen. Oh my God. I hate these people. The way they talk and the way they look at the world, you're like, no, that just isn't that's not how it works at all. He says it's really hard for the judiciary to function. It's hard for judges to operate when there's a lack of stability. And it's not just judges. It's the litigants, the lawyers, the law professors who have to tear up their syllabuses. I mean, it's fundamental to our American system of justice that law works incrementally, that cases build upon cases, and that we rely on precedent. Well, unless the precedent was bad. If the precedent was bad, then it was bad. I had this argument with Destiny. Or, well, it was with Pisco on Destiny's channel. I'm like, wait. So you think precedent doesn't matter? I'm like, no, it's a consideration. But if the law is bad, then it's bad. It's like, no. What do you mean, no? Like, if it's bad law, it's bad law. It doesn't like become good law just because it exists for a while. It's like, yes, it does. Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. How can you come to the conclusion that bad law should be good because it's around? If it's bad, get rid of it, excise it, cut it off. There may be some complications, some things that have to like change slowly or whatever. But if it's bad law, it's bad law. These guys like, no, well, we rely on precedent. I mean, you rely on precedent up to a point. But at some point, they're like, you know what? Owning people's probably not right. I guess. That's the stability of the law. The law has never been stable. We don't want it to be. We're in the English common law system. Do we really want stability of law from 1450s England? No. Jesus. And when you have a group of people who come in and disregard precedent, it really unsettles things. It causes chaos. People don't know how to operate. The law is now constantly shifting. You said nihilism, and that's actually what it is. I think it's also a lack of humility, a lack of respect for all the law that's been out there for centuries of the American judicial system. Who gave these originalists the right to kill the Constitution? Originalists come in and say, what does the Constitution say? Like, what is that? What's it say? How dare you kill it? Like, buddy, like, I want to figure out what it says. No, you're going to kill it. It doesn't, they just say the literal opposite of what they mean. It's fucking amazing. And when the Constitution is killed, where do we stand? I don't know, on its corpse like you guys do with children who get shot in a school. Ellie Fan says, that is great, but you're still not a real Texan. Stop desecrating that sweet tea. Ellie, one day, someone's going to make tea out of you. And when the Constitution is killed, where do we stand? It makes it so difficult for courts throughout the land. Oh, courts have a hard job. It's tough being a judge. Shut up. Stern says, in the Wilson case, you were tasked with applying Bruin's history and tradition. Oh, I love this. History and tradition test by poring over the historical record to find these analogs from 1789. Wait, why were you tasked with it? You didn't have to pore over the historical record. It was brought to you in briefs. Can you talk about what the process was like for you trying to apply this ridiculously amorphous, newfangled test and turn it into something that looks like law? The newfangled test of, is this the same as an old thing? Okay. All right. And it was actually a pretty fun process. Oh, it's so hard. Wow, this is so great. Because the U.S. Supreme Court totally disregarded the text, history, tradition, and purpose of the Second Amendment. So here you go. This guy is going to assert that the text, history, tradition, and purpose of the Second Amendment was disregarded by the Supreme Court, but listen to how he proves it. All right. So in Wilson, we decided to play on the originalism playing field and show how the justices were incredibly dishonest about how law and facts are cherry-picked. That was not a difficult thing to do. Now, what we also did was trace back the real history and tradition of Hawaii, which I don't know if you guys know. The real history and tradition of Hawaii means jack fucking shit when it comes to Bruin, which is talking about the history and tradition of the Second Amendment in the United States. Bruin guarantees a minimum amount of liberty for the Second Amendment to all citizens of all states. If another state wants to provide more liberty, that's fine. They can't provide less, though. So Hawaii's history and tradition doesn't matter if it provides less individual liberty. It just doesn't. So he says, and if we trace back the tradition of our state, there absolutely was no right to carry lethal weapons in public for possible self-defense. Oh, is that because you're actually a U.S. colony or territory or whatever occupied by like previously violent tribal people? And the white people are like, I don't really want them walking around with clubs and killing people in public or something. I mean, maybe, or ukuleles. It was an incredibly joyous exercise for me because I knew we were on the correct legal terrain. The Hawaii Constitution's counterpart to the Second Amendment has the exact same words. So I thought, hey, here's an opportunity to take down the dishonest U.S. Supreme Court's analysis of the Second Amendment, which snubbed federalism principles and increased homicide throughout the nation. So he's going to show that the Supreme Court justices misread the history of the Second Amendment by showing the history of Hawaii's version of the Second Amendment. Hawaii became a state in 1967. Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. Okay. I'll be curious how that works. Wilson really opened up the opportunity to articulate the importance of state constitutionalism in protecting the fundamental rights of citizens. Of course, Dobbs raised awareness of interpreting states' constitutions to ideally protect every state citizen's fundamental rights, since the U.S. Supreme Court is abdicating that responsibility. So he goes after the U.S., the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution by using Hawaii's analog amendment. Okay. Or Hawaii's analog in their constitution. Great. Was it 1959? Oh, shit. I thought it was 67. You sure? Let's see. I mean, I'm sure you guys are right. 1959. See, you were wrong. I was right. I thought it was, why did I think it was 67? It was something related to Obama. So then Stern goes on. See, this shit, it doesn't matter the subject. These people are all the same. They're all the same in how they approach problems. And this is why we have a critical disconnect with between the two sides of the political system in the United States. We have one side that just here is saying we want this thing. And then when they describe it, how they have it, it's the opposite of what they're asking for. Stern says, over the last few years, conservative litigants and justices tried to strip the ability to protect voting rights from state Supreme Courts. What? And it's hard not to think they were motivated by fear of state Supreme Courts acting independently, departing from phony originalism of the Roberts Court and actually protecting the right to vote, which we used to consider fundamental. Oh my goodness. Did we consider the right to vote fundamental? We used to, like, when? Was it in the was it fundamental at the drafting of the Constitution? Not quite. Not really. Wasn't really fundamental over there. They didn't give it to blacks or women or anybody. Just white landowning males. Actually, not even. Not even. The right to vote was not granted to anyone as far as the presidential election goes. What? It was a right that eventually under the 14th Amendment would be guaranteed to everyone if the right was guaranteed to anyone. But the if is the big thing there. Right to vote, fundamental. I'm not so sure. And this guy, wait, weren't they just talking about getting rid of federalist principles? The whole point of federalism is that you don't have a direct democracy. You don't have a direct right to vote. And says absolutely. And again, that's just more dishonesty. U.S. Supreme Court's decisions are really destroying democracy. How? It's just race to the extreme in case after case. It tears at the fabric of our nation and what I view our federal constitution to be. What I view our federal constitution to be. There it is, right? What I view. Their interpretation is wrong. My interpretation is right. Theirs is originalist, which is bad because theirs is based on something else. Mine's based on me. Therefore, I'm correct. And now, over the last few weeks, it seems like it's not just personal values and preferences that they're injecting into their jurisprudence. They also give preference to specific individuals, and that's where the court is truly eroding confidence in the judicial system. Stern says, when you say they're giving preference to specific individuals, you're thinking about Donald Trump in the presidential immunity case. I am. And there you have it. There you have it. What preference to specific individual is the Supreme Court giving to Donald Trump? Is it because he's Donald Trump? Whatever specific preference you think is going on, is it because he's Donald Trump? Because that's actually what the prosecution is doing. That's what the judges in his cases are doing. Well, it's because it's Donald Trump. Like that's not even hidden. It's overt. But when we're talking about the Supreme Court and their, I guess, case selection, maybe, and their analysis, is it because he's Donald Trump or because he's a former president of the United States? And this is the first time these presidential powers have come into question. Where was the deference to Donald Trump during the 2020 election? Where was that? Like from the Supreme Court, when they just didn't help him in any capacity. They didn't take a case that should have been original jurisdiction. They just, no. Where was that? Where were they giving specific special treatment to Donald Trump? Oh, it's because it's a fucking lie. It's a lie. Tara Rayner says, please pray for my son. He's just been listed on the national database as missing. Mom loves you, Tanner. Damn it, Tara. Shit, I will pray for Tanner. Hopefully he's found safe and swiftly. My goodness. But this whole thing is insane. Like, they didn't save Trump in 2020. They haven't done anything so far to particularly give any advantage to Trump at all. All they said was, yeah, individual states can't exclude a presidential candidate because it really kind of fucks up the whole system if they do that. Without some sort of basis that Congress could write a law around, as it says in the amendment. Like, they could just do that. But they haven't done that. So until they write a law from, the 14th Amendment, article, paragraph 5 or whatever, until they write a law, as it says in the amendment that they have to do, you can't just have a state exclude a presidential candidate for no reason because they want to. Like, that's kind of an overstep of state authority there, because it takes away, a potential candidate from every other state if it's done in a certain way. That's not an intelligible system. So yeah, we're not going to do that. That's the big W Trump's gotten. Like, in his criminal cases, he's not criminally immune yet. Probably should be, but he might not be. His gag orders aren't being overturned like left and right by the Supreme Court of the United States. He's not. What special treatment is he getting? The main thing that he should be getting special treatment for is his status as a former president who's criminally indicted, as the first criminally indicted former president in U.S. history. And then the other part of that being he's running for president again. So any of these infringements have an extra effect on, clamping down on his political speech and the mix of political and personal speech as well. These are really important questions. If someone is not just running for the office of the presidency, but is a major candidate for the major parties, and in many polls favored to win, and in other polls favored to lose only by a small margin. He's not just a candidate. He's one of the leading contenders with a severe shot at victory. Curtailing his speech in any way is a different question. But we also need to figure out if there is an overlap or a distinction in any way between his personal speech and his political speech, in the same way they're trying to figure out with criminal immunity. How do we separate the personal from the political. Because if you're stopping his speech, you're stopping his politics. If you're saying, well, he can't insult a witness or whatever, why not? He should be able to. Plus, what if part of his campaign is insulting Stormy Daniels, or Michael Cohen, calling him a liar and a cheat that the government has on their payroll or their favor roll or whatever, trying to get an angle in to protect himself and to sell his book. He's trying to sell me upriver in court. Why can't he say that? Oh, it's intimidating to Cohen. Oh, sure. Okay, fine. I guess Trump, the mystery man with hitmen all over the place. But these are the reasons they're using and giving. They're saying, oh, well, if he talks about a witness, that witness could be intimidated. But you're curtailing his political speech, his campaign for the presidency, which means you're allowing the judicial branch to step in and interfere with the election. It's not good, man. It's not good at all. But when it comes down to this Trump derangement syndrome, it's pervasive and it's all encompassing. This guy, though, has a way, it's not Trump derangement syndrome. This guy is fucking broken. And he's a judge in Hawaii, but his entire view on the judiciary's role, his entire view on his role as a Supreme Court justice in the state is backwards and skewed. And his view of how the U.S. Supreme Court comes to its conclusions is blatantly incorrect and false. And it's false for a reason, because his narrative is more important. His interpretation is the one that matters. He said so. With that, guys, speaking of things that matter, I need to go. I got to get going on the rest of my day. I will be back tonight, 11 o'clock Central Time. We'll have another show, normal nighttime show. Thanks for hanging out with me during the daytime. I'm going to try and get more of these daytime shows in. Eventually, of course, streaming trials and stuff as able to incorporate more of a daytime schedule. But for now, thanks for hanging out with me. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this one. And we'll bring that whiskey stolen topic to tonight's show and maybe some other fun things. All right. Until then, see you next time or whatever. Peace. Peace.
Oh, he drinks a fair bit, but you realize that it just helps get his noggin jogging along. With his glass by his side and his kids asleep tight, we'll hear some lost planning tonight. With his microphone muted, we'll laugh at this boomer until he explains it's all part of the plan. Watch his face become redder as he becomes meta, raging at idiots from Twitterland. From the white shores of Maine to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, his lady is fair, and she handles herself with the grace of one who has borne many children. As the wife of a lawman, she makes sure that he has the time and the place to provide for them there. So pour out an Ardbeg, a bow, more of that brogue. The spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the T-post on Twitter, as we hear lost planning tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, the guests are all planet folks from Doug T to Drexel. They bring their perspective and spice to the mix. But the reason we're here and the one that we cheer is the one who is showcasing us his career. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the thought better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the one